What is up, everyone? Welcome to the RotoWire After Dark Champions League show. As usual, we are back late on Tuesday night to preview the Wednesday Champions League slate. My name is Jack Burkart. It's nice to be back in the host spot. You can find me on Twitter at Jack Burkart. And we are joined by the distinguished Ryan Belongia. Ryan, how are you doing after today's Tuesday slate?
Oh, I'm doing okay. I did well on the early slate, but the main slate was a little frustrating. I mean, I cashed cash games and did okay in the main GPP, but I lost high stakes. I mean, I came on here yesterday and touted Providel and wrote him up in my article too, and then I ended up playing the Antwerp keeper, who might have gotten back to zero. I'm not sure, but he was in the negatives for most of the day. While what did the Red Star keeper scored over 20, I believe. Allowed three
Uh,
goals, and
he deserved
so
it for some of these like point blank saves he was making, I thought.
yeah. And then I ended up playing Haaland, and obviously that wasn't going to make you money today. But I like this slate for tomorrow. And how'd you do? I think you did better
Um,
than me.
It was interesting. So I didn't play too many lineups, so it's a little tough for me with the new job in the midweek. But I played a tournament lineup without Haaland because I just thought it was. I think I played both my tickets into the main without Haaland. It just felt like a good spot that you could fade Haaland. You could play Mbappe. I don't know what Mbappe flipped ownership at, but I assumed I would have been happy with it. I know he bagged a pen. But I just wanted to play some other combinations because Haaland was going to be popular. People were going to play him correlated with the other Manchester City pieces. So I just thought, why not just do a different one off? So those worked out pretty well. I played the Lazio goalkeeper who had just scored that ridiculous goal at the end, which righted a lot of wrongs in many lineups. But it was kind of funny with cash because we didn't expect both Matias Nunes and Sergio Gomez to start. And this kind of like enabled a weird construction. And I know I have a DM thread with you and Adam. I'm like, I think I'm going to be an idiot and just play João Cancelo. And it worked out that a lot of people did that. We flipped the same lineup. Jordan had a 1v1. I hadn't talked to Jordan about that at all. So it was kind of an interesting slate where you got to play those two cheap
Yeah,
midfielders.
the three of us, me, you, and Jordan, flipped the same lineup in cash, and me and you didn't talk at all. We didn't talk with Jordan at all. So yeah, that was pretty interesting, I thought. Um, yeah,
Especially with
I
like late
agree.
breaking news. Like we weren't talking about Cancelo and cash
Right,
yesterday.
because that changed everything. Like I had pretty much everything I wanted to do was pretty much done. And then we weren't really expecting either of those guys to start, maybe one of them, and then both did. So yeah, that changed everything. Yeah, I agree with you. That was a great spot to fade Haaland, and that's what I did in most of my lineups in the main GPP. But when you play one lineup in the $444 tournament, it pretty much decides your day. So
Yeah.
yeah, on to tomorrow.
Yeah, on to tomorrow if it's a 3:33 or whatever. I think it's definitely a smaller slate after the opener. But I mean tomorrow's slate, it's quite exciting. It's a lot more interesting than the previous slate. So today, we had to deal with giga favorites Barcelona and Manchester City, and both teams were like criminally priced over all positions. It was ridiculous. Now in this slate, we have three favorites and they're home favorites. So we have Arsenal, they're hosting PSV Eindhoven, Benfica's hosting Red Bull Salzburg, and then Bayern Munich is a pretty big favorite at home to a struggling Manchester United team. And a lot of these there's a lot of like well-priced players. The title of the video is underpriced Benfica. A lot of these Benfica forwards are priced in the 7K range, including Angel Di Maria, who will split set pieces. Harry Kane's really the only expensive Bayern Munich player above 10K, but you got a lot of 7K players there. And a similar story for Bukayo Saka and Arsenal. And I feel like we can never really ignore Napoli. And there's a couple potential free squares in the other two games with low total. So Ryan, what about these matchups strikes out to you before we kind of break down cash games?
Just in general, this is a great slate. Like completely opposite of the Man City slate we had today. You mentioned there's soft pricing, so you can kind of just afford whoever you want. Like for cash games, we're going to get into it, but it seems kind of simple in that, like you can just who are the five best plays point per dollar? You can kind of just play them all if you want to. It's easy. Defenders are priced fairly, but just in general, the reason I like this slate is because it's more of like a classic style soccer slate in that you spend up for two defenders. At least I think that's the move. Whereas like today's slate, like you're just trying to find the best punt defenders. play roulette on who's going to score 2 or 3 goals. It's like we're playing a completely different game. Here, you actually got to pick your spots. Arsenal, Benfica, Munich, it's all similar spots. Like nothing obvious, which is nice.
Yeah, I was thinking about this. I was like, when I was trying to make a cash game lineup, I was like, well, I don't know if this is the best lineup necessarily, but I felt like I could just play a bunch of good plays. So there's going to be a lot of options that you can play, and I don't know. We'll see if we can break anything down with tournaments. But maybe one thing that we can do is we can start looking at the forward position. And I think one of the big question marks heading in is if you want to use a player like Bukayo Saka in the forward spot. So I'll scroll up to our expected lineup. But Martinelli, I believe he got hurt over the weekend. I wasn't able to watch that Arsenal game. So that's going to leave a situation where Saka and Leandro Trossard are probably going to be splitting set pieces. My thought at first was Bukayo Saka was not the first name that I clicked because there are some other value options. But the one thing I think is that there's not many cheap options, and you're probably going to be spending up for guys that are like 7K and above. So Ryan, do you agree with that? And what's your impression of the position?
Yeah. So the first lineup I made, kind of the same. You want to play Saka, but he's not necessarily the first guy in because of some of these other prices. But I think there is enough value to afford him in the end. Like, I guess if you go through all the forwards, who are the forwards that you would want to play in cash games? To me,
I
there's
wrote
only
down a list.
three.
I have my list of
Okay,
top
my list
plays
is
right here.
three. So my list was only 3 players. So I want to hear yours.
Well, I included a lot of guys who just had good goal scoring odds. So it's like it's tough to call Kane a bad play, right? If people play him in cash, I don't think you're nuts, but I don't think that's the move this slate. So I thought the guys I wanted to play, Angel Di Maria, who's only 7K for Benfica, and he's splitting set pieces with Orkun Kochku, if I said that right. And then we have Leroy Sané, who's cheap, and he took some corners when Kimmich left early, and he might take some set pieces. Maybe you can't count on that, but he's got good open play value. So those two are just the first names that I clicked. A lot of the other guys, the Napoli guys feel a little bit goal dependent. Kingsley Coman, I don't know if he's going to be fit for a full 70 minutes. He's coming off of an injury. So with those two guys in, it's like, well, I'll just play them and see if I have money for Saka later.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. So Di Maria, Sane, and Saka, pretty much the only 3 I was considering. And then, yeah, if you not, I don't know if we can skip around to midfield, but
Sure.
Rakitic for 4,400, taking pretty much all of Sevilla's set pieces. He seems like a lock for cash games.
Yeah.
So, you're going to have the money for Saka. If you want, you can play all 3 of those forwards. You can play Saka, Sane, and Di Maria pretty comfortably.
That's what I have in my first draft because I was just making a lineup and I put Saka in my utility. I'm like, well, I guess I have money for Saka and I can play some middling goalkeepers. So that definitely felt good. It is interesting though because we have the 3 forwards we mentioned, but I really only feel like on the slate overall, Rakitic is the only lock at 4.4K. Other decisions are justifiable, but you just kind of get funneled onto the classical cash plays. But I mean, they're good plays, but it's not it doesn't feel slam dunk, if that makes sense. There's routes for these guys to fail.
Yeah, the one thing I would say is Di Maria should probably be 9K. So I mean he's probably a lock.
Mm-hmm. That's true. That's true. Sane, I guess, is the one who has a bit more of a fragile range of outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's just where you land. So Bear is saying Horta for Braga. I don't know about that. He splits some set pieces, but I think he's in the 9K range. These Braga guys, I was trying to grind who take set pieces, and I should have just looked at the price first, so I could just say I don't want to play any of those guys. Braga are priced like they're favorites in a Europa League tie against the third place team in Belgium, not a team that has to play a tough matchup.
I was wondering if DraftKings knew something that we don't. Those Braga guys, 9,600 for Horta, 9,300 for Bruma. Yeah, I mean, as underdogs, they're just not in consideration, right? Tournament plays, sure, they'll probably be 5% owned.
Yeah, I mean, if you want the low owned hat trick, I mean, you can always play that angle. I found that type of thing to be thin though, because you have 3 other teams in good spots.
Yeah,
I mean,
when I'm going for that, it's from a favorite. I'm playing a player from a favorite.
Yeah, for tournaments, it's tough for me to justify someone like a 9.6K Ricardo Horta when I can save 6,000 and play Osimhen. Like,
Right, because the
it's a
thing
bit of a slam
is,
dunk.
like, even if Horta scores for 9.6K, he's not even going to win you anything yet.
No,
You
plenty of
need
people
more.
cheaper are going to score goals. Yeah.
Right.
So I on a 6 game slate like Champions League, pay up to be contrarian. Maybe that's like a good option in a 3 game Premier League slate because like there could just be no goals. But there's going to be goals from somewhere from cheaper, more obvious suspects, from guys who have floors who can get 20 points with only 1 goal. So I feel like that's not going to be my preferred route.
Yep.
Maybe we can go through matchups later, talk about tournament angles. But yeah, I mean, you can play one of these goal scorers if you want to be a more high testosterone cash game player. But I think I'll be playing Di Maria, Saka, and Sane at least from my impression heading in. So maybe we can skip into midfield. We're making a scorching progress through this show, and yeah, Rakitic was a clear misprice at 4.4K. He was splitting set pieces for Sevilla, and that was happening even when Suso was in. So Adam is not projecting Suso to start, and in that case, Rakitic virtually functions as a monopolist. He might even does he take their penalties, Ryan?
He has in the past. I'm
Yeah,
not
he has in the
sure what's
past.
happened recently. Yeah. I know
I can't.
Campos has also taken penalties. I'm not sure what's happened this season.
Yeah, but either way, I mean, it's going to be tough to get me off of Rakitic in just about every format. He's not going to be sneaky or anything like this, but he often doesn't get played as much as he should. But usually in those cases, he's like 6K, not a complete misprice at 4.5K. So that's a free clicking cash. But otherwise, there's quite a few interesting options across the price range. So I liked Leandro Trossard just because I could get all Arsenal set pieces against PSV. But what were you thinking for a midfield spot? Outside of, I guess, Rakitic.
Yeah, no, I Rakitic for sure. I really like Trossard. I clicked him at first. Um, but then you're playing him over Kimmich. And we've seen these spots for Trossard where you just think he's an absolute smash. And it seems like every time he gets subbed early and doesn't get there. I know, it's just anecdotal on a few occasions. You see Martinelli out. Look, if I knew Trossard was going to get 90 minutes, yeah, I would love it. But this isn't like a smash spot for Arsenal. And it's just not going to surprise me when he gets subbed for Reece Nelson or Emil Smith Rowe or whoever it is. So I think it's fine. Like, I'm a big Trossard fan. Great player, good fantasy player. Obviously, still a good matchup for Arsenal, but it just means, yeah, you're playing him over Kimmich, which is obviously a big talking point on this slate.
Mhm.
Yeah, what do you think about Kimmich? I think people will go both ways on him.
Yeah. Well, my initial instinct was just to click Kimmich because I always click Kimmich in Champions League cash games, and it usually works out pretty well for you. The high-paced nature of the games suits his floor, and like he's a player who will shoot from distance. I don't think he's one of these like classic, not to insult Douglas Luiz, but I don't think he's a center defensive midfielder of that character. But what I did is I opened up his game log, and normally the one thing that we can count on for Kimmich, the one thing that sort of makes the whole operation work out, is that he takes a monopoly of his team's set pieces. And then I scroll down and I see Leroy Sané has taken like a third of the team's set pieces so far, mostly coming from corners. And I'm not really sure what to make of it. So there's 2 games where Leroy Sané did take some set pieces. That was a game against Augsburg. And what we saw right here is I think Augsburg scored a goal early in that game, and that might have caused a situation where Bayern were just going to play fast. And we've seen Sané take corners when they're playing fast. You don't have time for Kimmich to wander halfway across the field. And then I think he must have picked up a knock against Leverkusen because he was subbed early, and then Sané took all of the corners there. So it if someone told me, Jack, don't worry about it, Kimmich is the monopolist unless the game script goes awry, I would just be like, okay, play Kimmich instead of Trossard because you're correct to worry about that. Um, Thomas Tuchel says Kimmich should be fit for the game. should be good for at least 80 minutes. It would suck if he subbed off early, right? When we have one of these set piece dependent players, we want those 90 minutes, and we want to make sure that they have those set pieces. So, are you alarmed by the situation at all, or do you think we can just trust the Kimmich process?
Man, it's really tough actually. As time goes on, I'm factoring in the uncertainty a little bit more.
And we have a comment from Ethan Sexton here, so maybe I've never done this, click the show comment. So Ethan's saying that Sane took every corner for Bayern on Friday, even with Kimmich on the pitch. That's a one-game sample, so that's somewhat alarming. Thanks for the shout-out, Ethan. That that makes me, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's very alarming. So Kimmich picked up a knock with Germany, and then when he came back, I guess maybe he wasn't fully fit. Also, who didn't start? Mazraoui didn't start. So I don't know. That might have been part of the reason Kimmich got subbed as well. So I'm not necessarily worried about the minutes. I'm not really worried about the minutes. But yeah, Sane taking every corner with Kimmich on the pitch, that's very alarming.
Yeah, I'm
like, it's probably enough for me to fade him in cash, even because there's other good plays.
Yeah, there's enough other good plays. Like, for example, Odegaard's probably not a cash play in this current Arsenal setup, but I could pay 6.9K for Orkun Köçkü, who would be splitting set pieces on the other side for Benfica, who have a pretty good matchup. I think one of the first shows I did with Adam, we loved all these Benfica guys, but yeah, Di Maria and Köçkü are the set piece guys. So you can't rely on our former friend João Mario to be the set piece taker. But I guess so. We probably want to look for a non Kimmich sort of option this range. I would
you could. Yeah, he seems okay. I haven't checked what's been happening with him in Benfica. Is he playing 90 minutes? Is he getting forward at all? Is he taking shots? Yeah, I'm not sure. Zielinski seems fine for 7,100.
Yeah, he does.
A little bit more attacking than Kimmich, more likely to score or assist. He's those minutes are pretty encouraging too.
Yeah, the minutes here are healthy shot numbers, which I like to see from Zielinski, because you don't want to see him only getting there on crosses.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, if Politano doesn't start, most of the set pieces are going to be his for the first 65 minutes until Politano shows up.
Do we have Politano projected in?
We do not. I know there's been a situation at Napoli where Kvicha Kvartshela, if I said that correct, he's coming off of an off-season injury that he picked up, so he's being ramped up. So that means that other forwards have had to pick up the slack for Napoli. So Raspadori's been playing a lot more, and Politano's been playing a lot more. So Politano's a guy you can play in a forward spot, but you can also play him in a midfield spot too. He's priced, I think, within 100 of Zielinski. I can double check that though.
Yeah, I think 7K and 7,100.
Yeah, Zielinski 7,100 and then Politano 7K. I mean, Zielinski.
Yeah, Zielinski seems like a fine cash option, definitely, and a better one if Politano's not in. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you kind of just have to weigh for yourself the Kimmich, whether you want to gamble on Kimmich or not. There's other guys you can play. You can get up to Trossard. I like getting up to Trossard, or you can go down to Zielinski. See, all three of those guys are good plays.
Yeah,
I guess take your pick, really.
Yeah, and then there are some cheaper guys. So Ryan, you mentioned that you wanted to spend up twice at defender. Maybe that was more of a tournament philosophy, but if you want to do that in cash games, I'm clicking some buttons, and if you do, Trossard and Rakitic, that is simply not happening. So were there any cheaper options, maybe like below the 6K mark at midfield, that you had your eyes on for cash games?
Yeah, I don't think you need it, but all the way down at 3,200, Christian Aslani for Inter is supposed to start in place of Çalhanoğlu, and Aslani took sets last year, like split with DeMarco pretty much the same as, at least I think, pretty much the same as Çalhanoğlu splits with him. I just don't think you need to necessarily go that low. Like, doesn't really do enough for you, in my opinion. But yeah, for me, spending up at two defenders or spending up for two defenders, I would do that in cash as well. I don't know. Maybe you need a punt to make it work.
I feel like you're going to end up needing a punt to make that work if you're playing Rakitic and Zielinski. So if you're doing this construction, or you can't play Saka, like you have to do some sort of workaround right there. I'm just not seeing the pricing work out exactly. There's a couple of interesting cheap options though, and it's Champions League, so it's name butchering season. But I was looking at a lot of these like Red Bull Salzburg players, and they're cheap. And Benfica isn't some like legendary team. It's a matchup where I feel like Red Bull Salzburg are capable of a goal or capable of good sequences where they can trouble Benfica. And if that's the case, they have two cheap set piece takers. So at defender you have Amar Didic. He splits, so he's like 3,700 at defender. And then you have this character right here. So Maritza Gjergard, we'll call him MK. And he split set pieces as well, a more defensively inclined midfielder. They play a midfield three, do Red Bull Salzburg, and he splits the set pieces, and it's 3,500. So maybe more of a tournament angle if you want to play, three Benfica players. Maybe one of those two players gets an assist. You don't want to pay up for the goal scorer necessarily, but that would be a piece up.
Sorry. Yeah, who did you say splits with Kiergaard? Who was the first guy you said?
Didic. Amar Didic.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we're skipping around again, but he would be the lowest I'd go in cash. Like, you could go down to him in cash and you can afford. I think you can just afford Trossard if you do that. Maybe you're like $100 short. Anyways, I think he's fine for cash. The other Salzburg guys, this Salzburg team to me seems weaker than ones in years past. They had a ton of talent recently. I looked at this lineup and a few of these guys are 18, 19, 20. Like, I want to say four guys are 20 or younger, and there's just not as much talent there as there used to be. The Oscar, I don't even know how you say his. How do you say his last name? This Israeli kid? I think he's Israeli, right?
I don't know. Oscar Glaucoma. I don't know how to say it. Gluck was probably a better.
I mean, this kid is the real deal, apparently, though. Like, I heard Arsenal even after him, Man U after him, like big clubs, and he's got a lot of hype. But yeah, like I'm sort of worried about. I don't think this Red Bull Salzburg team's as good as they've been recently, but I haven't seen them play.
Yeah. I don't have Gluck's salary. I mean, none of the Salzburg players are expensive. They're all super cheap. And there are a lot of new players. So I was like the Patrick Star meme looking at under his rock. It's like, who are you people? Like, I played a couple Europa League slates with Salzburg, and I don't recognize any of these names.
Right.
So.
Yeah, none of them are above 4K, Jack. They're all under 4K. Every midfielder.
Yeah, and all the forwards are under 5K. Like this guy Karim Konate, he gets subbed all the time, but I think I saw some logs where Roko Simic played 90 minutes, and he's the stone min at 3,500. So if you had some barbell construction that played a few Benfica players, you want to play one of those cheap guys.
I saw Roko Simic. He's like 6'3", 6'4", like your target man. Maybe he gets a header goal or something.
Maybe he gets a goal and that's good enough for utility spot, and then you nail the 4-leg parlay on the studs part of the construction. You can play a lot of forward eligible players in a midfield spot, so I'm not too worried about the opportunity cost necessarily. Like we just talked about midfield, but there's not so many like tournament must-haves at the midfield spot. Like Zielinski is not a tournament must, Kimmich is not a tournament must, and Trossard isn't. So I'm not too worried about using the roster spot in that way.
Yeah, no, I'm not either. I think that's a good shout for tournaments, those Salzburg guys. One other thing for cash, I guess we can mention Bryce Mendes. I don't know, 6,600 just because he's been playing longer this season and taking pretty much all the sets. Like the last couple years, he was always coming off at 60, and he still might, but like just looking at his game log this year, much more encouraging. And he's taken pretty much every set piece. So I think Bryce Mendes is okay. It's not the greatest matchup against Inter, obviously.
Yeah, you're gonna have a couple shots. Probably not much shot of a bailout goal, but you could land on an assist. I did notice Bryce Mendes and pretty fair price. It's just the worst game environment of the entire slate, right? Like Real Sociedad are going to be home. Well, I don't know. I guess they're home, so maybe they'll attack a little bit more. But Inter Milan feel like a slightly more defensive team. Maybe that's a bad take, but I don't know. This game,
No,
the
I think
bookies
you're
have
right.
this as a slog.
It's one to fade, pretty much.
So
Similar to the Lazio Madrid game from today.
Yeah. Like, Kimmich is more likely to score a goal than Bryce Mendes, in my opinion. So I'd rather
maybe, yeah.
Well, at least
You're
Kimmich
probably
shoots
right,
from
actually.
distance.
Yeah, and he plays for Bayern Munich.
Yeah. So again, not a crazy move, but that would probably be like a cash only. I don't see myself really wanting to dabble in on those Real Sociedad pieces.
No, there's better spots for tournaments.
I think if we want to keep bouncing around fun names, I always play Nico Barea in tournaments, and it's never worked out, but he's 4.6K, so I mean, fair enough, I guess. But I just talked about how that's the worst game environment of the Champions League slate, so maybe that's not the most enticing thing. I was looking at a lot of these lens players, and they're all kind of expensive. They're a frustrating DFS team because it seems like no one relevant plays 90. Like, maybe this Adrian Thomason character plays, 90 minutes occasionally, but he has no floor. The nice thing about them is that this guy, Angelo Fognini, he takes most of their set pieces, but he's like a lock to be subbed off at the 65th minute mark. So I guess for the same reason that you would play Bryce Mendes, I guess if people were playing Fulgini, that's like a decent cash play, but I just can't play a guy like that who's going to get subbed off potentially at 60 minutes.
Yeah, no, me either. Not in this spot away to Sevilla. One of my takes for this slate is that Sevilla smash French league teams. They have for about 10 years running in Champions League, in Europa League. I know this is a different Sevilla team. Obviously, they're not as good as they once were, but I give them a big edge in this spot. Just La Liga against the French league, Sevilla at home. I'm on Sevilla in this spot. Switching to tournaments, all their forwards I think are great tournament plays, especially Naziri, Lamela. They're both cheap. No one's going to play Ocampos.
What's Lamela's price?
59.
Oh gosh, might have to play.
Same as and Naziri yeah.
And Nesri. Yeah, Lamela and Nesri are cheap. And Nesri always has often scored goals on these European slates, so I'll always be tempted to click his name. Man, I was going to play one cash lineup and one tournament lineup, but I'm a bleeding heart Tottenham fan to my core. So if there's a good spot to play Eric Lamela, especially when I'll be playing Rakitic and maybe one of the Sevilla fullbacks, maybe I'll have to have a third.
Do you remember Lamela's Rabona against Arsenal?
Oh, I remember it quite well. I think Tottenham did not win that game, though. I think
no, they didn't win that game. Yeah, it might have been like 5-1, and Lamela scored with that one or something like that. I don't know. Anyway,
we got Ozzy in here saying that Frankowski loves to cross the ball, but he's 6K. I did notice Frankowski, but he's like a little old and kind of one of these like boring players for Poland. I mean, I played him on these Euro qualifier slates over the summer because I have no life, and no disrespect to anyone who plays those slates because I do too. But he'll get some crosses, but not a particularly exciting player, and one without defender eligibility. So again, it's one of those things like Bryce Mendes. You can play that in cash, but there's probably too many 8-point outcomes in there, and you might want guys that have more 20-point outcomes in a Champions League environment.
Yeah, he's like a makeshift wingback who crosses. Like he reminds me of Perisic on Tottenham last year. Like, Maybe you'll get 8 crosses sometimes, but yeah, no, I don't want that for tournaments.
Yeah, not the most direct player. At least Perisic kind of goes hero mode sometimes, though usually shoots it into Rosie, if my memory serves me right. But yeah, making our way around. One thing I have to say about Sevilla, Ryan, is that I noticed that Fernando was playing in the midfield, and I always have to ask myself. So this is like 5 years ago. I was talking to a Brazilian friend in graduate school, and he's like, Manchester City are terrible. They're starting Fernando. Like this is a disaster. So he was saying Fernando was dust. And so I clicked the name because maybe there's many Fernandos, and it is our former friend Fernando of the earlier Manchester City days. So maybe I should
Is
be a
it
little bit
really?
worried. Yes, it is.
No
He's got
way. I
look
yeah,
two
okay. I
two
didn't know
seasons
that
with
either.
Manchester City, and then he gets banished to Galatasaray, and then
Ah,
has been playing for Sevilla.
okay. Yeah, so what, your buddy says he's bad now? I mean, I believe that.
Well, he's like a total like
He's old, right?
yeah, but this friend I was talking about, like he's like a pure fan, like completely irrational, like totally just like a laundry bro of sorts. So I'm not sure
Yeah,
that's like the most
I
analytic
gotcha.
opinion, but that doesn't seem like the best guy to have anchoring your midfield. You do have Sumare, who was a pretty good defensive midfielder from Leicester, so it can't be so bad. Sergio Ramos is old, but going to make any defense better. This is kind of an old Sevilla side, though. Now that we keep on talking about it, like Ocampos and Lamela, they can't be getting any younger. Rakitic is old, so I don't know.
Oh,
Maybe it could
wait.
fall flat.
Sorry, no, I was confused. Fernando. For some reason,
Yeah.
I was thinking Fernandinho. Yeah,
Oh,
I know.
yeah.
Yeah, no. I know this Fernando. He's been there forever. I thought you meant Fernandinho went there. My bad. Yeah, no. I just think Sevilla is a much better team. Like, again, like Spanish league at home to middling or second tier French league teams. It's always been such a good spot, and that the Spanish team is going to dominate possession, hopefully create some chances, and yeah, that's how I think it's going to go. So it's just Sevilla guys for me.
Yeah, I mean, at least they are mostly good players. And like you said, I don't think these second tier French league teams that accidentally qualified for the Champions League, I don't think that's gone so well in the past, though I would have to check my work on that,
It
Mark.
has not gone well in the past. The gap may be closing, but it has not gone well in the past.
Yeah. Well, moving on, I think we talked about almost every single major midfield player. We haven't talked much about Manchester United. I would like to talk about them later, but Casemiro is only 3.4K, so you can throw Casemiro in any lineup, and I think it's okay, especially if you have a Bayern Munich pieces in tournaments.
Yeah,
Oh,
he has just because he has goals in him. I mean, he's looked
hmm
very dusty this season, but it doesn't
that's
change the
true.
fact that he scores goals. So
And somehow never gets called for yellow cards, so he doesn't like lose the 2.5 points that often either. So like at 3.4K, you don't really have to do much to pique my interest. Let's move on to the defender position. So the first name that stood out to me with Chalanoglu out was Federico DiMarco, who is continuing to do this thing, except when I fade him in the Champions League final where he played 90 minutes. He's playing his whole 65-minute building. Sorry to bring that back up, by the way. I'm tilted again just thinking about it. But
yeah,
he played to 65 minutes, but always gets a pretty good floor. Very much attacking player. Um, there's a lot of decent fullback options. No one really a smash play, in my opinion. Maybe you disagree. I mean, like DeMarco's a good play, but he could get 8 points and get subbed off early, so that's not necessarily a smash for him at that price. So, who do you have your eye on at the defender position?
yeah. Demarco worries me for all the reasons you said, but he he's such a crusher for DFS. I mean
Mm-hmm.
that he gets there in 60 minutes. So I'm gonna play him in cash games, but I think it's fine to fade him in tournaments because there's other good options. Um, Specifically both Sevilla guys.
Mm.
Point per dollar, Navas. Navas is probably my favorite play on the slate. Close with, 3,700 for Dedic if he's going to take a few sets. is pretty nice too. But as far as open play value goes, Navas for sure. But he doesn't have quite as much upside, I don't, as Pedrosa. So I like him too for tournaments for sure. And then I think Ba for Benfica has some upside. He gets forward quite a bit. So yeah, those are the four that stood out to me. It's five with the two Sevilla guys. Yeah, five defenders. I would say those five. I don't know. Did I miss anybody?
I don't really think you missed anyone. So if you use Didic as your 3,700, this is an acceptable punt sort of character.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean
those are all great
Tomiyasu's
plays.
3,200. I get
Yeah,
Tomiyasu. That doesn't seem to work out great. I don't know. It could, but
it's another one of those things, right? On DraftKings, sometimes in the Discord, by the way, go to rotowire.com/chat. The soccer Discord is always hopping. There's always people like, oh, who's the cheapest fullback? And I always get it on DraftKings, right? Like, fullbacks that get some crosses, you can spend your money elsewhere. It's always a fine play. But I mean, it's Tomiyasu. He doesn't have any real upside in that spot. He's kind of doesn't really have a place in the team anyways. So I don't think he's particularly good either. I think
a
a
little
player like
harsh.
maybe okay. Well, I'm coming off a little harsh then, but I'm just remembering starting Kieran Tierney when he's dirt cheap, and like he just busts. Like the Arsenal fullbacks, unless I'm fading Ben White, never really crush that often for me in DFS. So I agree. If you can have that $500 extra and get up to Didic, maybe it just costs you taking a boring goalkeeper and going down to a goalkeeper who you need to rely on to get like 5 saves to get value instead of like eke out a clean sheet.
Yeah, I don't think you need to go that low. Like I'm thinking of this slate as you need 10 points from each defender spot. That's the way I'm playing this slate.
There's plenty of options for it. I did look at Pedrosa. His floor is pretty impressive, and there's a match with 3 shots. I didn't look at his previous season logs. He really hasn't gotten much run with the Sevilla side, but it's tough to argue
Did
with the
he
game
just?
log.
I feel like he just signed there. Wasn't he at
Espanyol.
Villarreal? Espanyol. Oh no, that's Pedraza. Yeah. No, I don't know
Yeah,
much about him, but he just he gets like he's more likely to score than Navas is what I meant.
yeah. And Navas, I pulled his game log up on the screen. Couldn't see it if you're listening on audio, but he has a 14 cross game this season. I mean, that's just what Jesus Navas does, and
What does
good,
Luis call him?
good man.
Crossing Jesus? Crossing
Crossing
Jesus.
Jesus.
Yeah, crossing Jesus. I saw that too. They were playing catch up in that game, but yeah, I mean, if you always see that from Navas. Like I remember a few times last season, even you have these games where he will just send them in, and it's great because they have their fullbacks are always great. It used to be Acuna on the left because they have and Nesri, who's
Hmm.
a big target man. That's how they score a lot of their goals. So
Yeah, so
yeah, I
even
like
in
the Sevilla guys.
possession, yeah, he'll be going for crosses. One thing that's often tripped me up in Champions League, and I've kind of learned this lesson the hard way. So in like a 4-game Premier League slate, and we had, so let's just pretend it's Premier League. We have Sevilla and Lens. If I'm playing Jesus Navas, like I feel like I have to have that Lens bring back. I want to find that guy who got 16 points because he scored a goal or he got an assist and a good floor, because that's going to push Navas. But I think this is a situation when none of these Lens players are particularly good plays. You can just play Jesus Navas and be like, I hope Sevilla goes down a goal. I'm not going to play that guy because I can play forwards from Arsenal or Bayern or Benfica. You won't need them. You just hope that the game script goes your way. So you can play
Yeah,
him for one off.
yeah, and you can also he's 4,200, so you can just play him and he'll score you 10 points in a comfortable win.
Yeah, keep
Like
it
it
clean
doesn't
sheet.
even have to. Yeah, he does. It doesn't even. They don't even have to get scored. Like there's a lot of ways for him to get there for you.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those dangers of correlation. It was definitely something I wanted to talk about when we talk more in detail about tournaments. But like, you just have to have the guys who. Oh, you have the guy who have the brace. Well, you need the guy who had the brace and an assist on top of that. You kind of just need the best plays. So correlating is not necessarily a thing that we want to be intentionally looking out for. We can, like you said, we can just play Navas. He's a good play.
Right, but in general, it's a good point. I try to correlate defenders in all sorts of ways. Like, yeah, I mean, yeah. I don't know. I'm just thinking that today is 2-game slate. Or just had Newcastle,
Mm,
Trippier. I think he ended up busting, but like on a that's sort of besides the point. But like if I'm gonna play Isak or one of their forwards in a tough spot, then I'll be more likely to fade Trippier. Like because if Newcastle were to score in that spot, we've seen what happens when they're up. We've seen Trippier busting against better teams, or So yeah, I mean, I'm always trying to pay attention to the correlation.
hmm Especially on the smaller slates, and then
Right,
again, the labor on a bigger slate, it's a bit more of a. There's just so many good plays that you can play that you shouldn't play a marginal you shouldn't play a bad lens forward because you have Jesus Navas in your lineup. Like that's still bad. It's not that correlated with each other. If there were much better plays, then go ahead.
right.
That's my take on it. I had a couple other defenders highlighted though. I want to talk to you about this Bayern versus United match, but Reguilon and Dallo are below 4K each, so they seem like
Hmm.
okay plays on paper. And then Alfonso Davies and I always screw this name up, but Mazzari at right back. Uh, More tournamenty type options, but I mean Alfonso Davies is a super attacking player. If there's a defender who scored a goal, he would be in the top three names that I guessed. So I think those names are worthy of consideration in GPPs.
Yeah, me too. And Reguilon specifically, like, yeah, I thought of him when you were talking about that correlation. Like, if you're gonna play a couple Bayern Munich players, he might be okay.
hmm
Um, as sort of like a bring back. We saw in his first start, he was very high up the pitch the whole game. He looked pretty good. He's like even more so than Luke Shaw was. I was pretty impressed with him actually. So yeah, I don't mind that.
I was always impressed with Reguilon when he was playing for Tottenham.
Seemed like he got a raw deal. I remember when they signed him initially. I remember thinking like, "Oh shit, Spurs got a good signing. I wouldn't have minded if Arsenal got him." But then, yeah, I don't know what happened.
Yeah, I think he had some mixed results. He was a young player playing for Mourinho, but he had some great matches under Mourinho. And then you had the COVID and then the Antonio Conte regime. And I mean, Conte was a disaster for a lot of
Oh
players. Like
yeah,
Conte
Conte didn't like him, right?
Which is just stupid, right? Conte
He,
didn't like a lot of
Conte.
good players, and it really makes me mad. This is a total aside, but like Destiny Udogie, like Conte was like, no, you have to go play in Italy, and I guess it worked out. But like Udogie looks completely in place as a 19-year-old fullback in the Premier League. He's so composed, he's excellent. He plays a full game as a fullback. Like, I mean, like, come on, like, what's going on here? Letting guys like Reguilon walk. Lo Celso goes to other places and plays pretty well. So I don't
Right,
know. Conte was an
yeah.
idiot.
No, I'm with you. You can see Conte like wanting those sort of technical, soft Spaniards out and bring in like some hard Italian who's going to grind for me, or like that old school style.
Perisic.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. Conte is a really decorated manager and he can grind results, but I mean, you look at I can't believe we're doing a Tottenham aside. Like everyone loves watching this Tottenham side right now, and they're just playing with much more energy. I mean, Conte was just a complete vampire in that squad. So good riddance, Antonio, and welcome back to the ketchup packets in the Tottenham Hotspur dining hall. But maybe we should talk about teams on this slate. Actually, I think we covered most of the defenders. Maybe we can talk about some other things. Do you have any goalkeeper thoughts? I really don't have any. In Champions League, I'm often spending down and praying that I don't get -6.
No, I don't really have any. I think you're spending down. I spent down today and it crushed me, but also if you spent down, you won because the cheapest goalie on the slate scored the most points and was in all the winning lineups. Uh, I think Providel scored a goal and ended up in some winning lineups, but he didn't. He didn't outscore the cheap goalie. Yeah, we say it all the time when there's a 6-game slate. It makes sense to play the cheaper goalies in the main GPP, like almost always. In small field, you can pay up. That on 6-game slates, that's fine too. But in the main GPP, you're probably going to want to play cheap goalies because one of them always gets there.
hmm
Yeah, I don't know. That's the advice.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. Like, and because none of these teams are like particularly huge favorites, right? We're talking about teams. I'm gonna scroll back. Like the best win percentage is 70%. and that belongs to Arsenal. But the PSV goalkeeper, I think, is 3,800. So we never see that sort of dichotomy in the Premier League slate. Like normally that guy is 4,100. These are like small misprices, but if you keep playing enough, I think these edges work in your
Yeah.
favor. So because the cheap
I,
goalkeepers are a bit underpriced relative to our usual DFS standards, 5 points is fine from one of these goalkeepers. You can still make the cash line.
yeah, definitely. Oh, for sure for cash games. For tournaments, just to play devil's advocate, these expensive keepers are better than the ones today. Ederson and Ter Stegen had basically no upside. Like you're hoping for 12 points maximum. Whereas Arsenal's keeper, Benfica, Munich, all their keepers, they're going to get 5 saves in a clean sheet, like a lot of times. So it's fine for tournaments, it's better than it was today for tournaments.
Yeah, you're completely right, actually. Like, if the cheap goalkeepers are better because the big teams aren't as big of favorites, those teams are also going to allow more chances. So, like, even if you play someone like David Raya and he concedes a goal, there do still feel like outs that he can get like 6 or 7 points. It's not like Ederson, where you're just like, when Ederson concedes a goal to Red Star Belgrade, you're like,
Oh.
3 points, best case scenario. I think he got to 5, but
Right.
it doesn't feel
Yeah,
good.
no, you're exactly right though.
We should put Ozzy on the show. Even Man City conceded, just play whoever fits. I think that's basically what the discussion got. I
Just
probably will
play
try to
whoever
barbell it
fits.
though. Sometimes these like low total boring guys, they just don't rack up enough saves. But yeah, I don't know. If you think you have a good goalkeeper evaluation, keep that secret because you'll have figured something out a lot of us struggle with. Yeah, so play whoever fits. All right, Ryan, let's talk about tournaments and maybe talk about some of these games we haven't really dug into. So I wanted your take on some of the Arsenal options because I don't know, Arsenal just don't look as good as they did, in the Marchish last year. It seems like a side which has suffered from inconsistency. I mean, I know what I'm getting from Gabriel Jesus. Bukayo Saka is excellent, and we talked about Trossard, but I mean, what's your take on what's going on with Martin Odegaard and Kai Havertz? I feel like I haven't gotten good results of Martin Odegaard. I mean, Kai Havertz, there's clips going on Twitter. He looks like a disaster. So, I mean, do you want to play these Arsenal guys in this matchup against PSV?
Yes, I do. I think, okay, no one can really tell you anything other than you can go either way on it. Like which Arsenal is going to show up. It's not going to surprise me at all if they score or if they win 4-0. And it's not really going to surprise me if they struggle to put one in, like has been happening a few times in the Premier League. In general, I think they've been playing better than most people think. I keep seeing this stat going around about field tilt. I'm not even sure most people know what that is, but Arsenal's is the highest in the Premier League by a wide margin. And basically, what it is like a team's share of possession in the final third. Basically, they're allowing very few chances and are in great positions all the time, basically offensively, and just aren't scoring. While at the same time, not really allowing many chances, but like sort of allowing some fluky goals here and there. Like it's very close to going the other way for Arsenal. It could be here. So like I'm gonna play some Arsenal. I don't know if I'll stack them, but yeah, like we mentioned we like Saka, we like Trossard. I think those guys are both fine one-offs. I think whoever starts at forward's a good play because they're cheap. Gab Jesus is cheap, and Ketty is even cheaper. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard not to have interest in Arsenal, but at the same time, it's fine to fade them too. Like again, we keep seeing them, struggling to put away Everton and Fulham and just not scoring goals. So there's just can't really say anything other than you can go either way on it.
Yeah, I mean, either you believe that it can't keep going as bad as it is when the peripherals are so good. It's like, apologies to people from England, but we had T Higgins with 150 air yards last week in fantasy football, and he didn't score anything. When it goes good for these guys, and maybe you get slightly reduced rostership as a result.
And on the and then on the pushback on the other side, PSV is a decent team. So like, it's not out of the realm of possibility that they hold Arsenal to one goal or yeah.
going into the slate when I was looking at the players, I was interested in Joey Veerman, who's basically a set piece monopolist, but more of a central defensive midfielder. I mean, he could be crossing to Luke de Jong. And I thought that would be a pretty cool tournament idea to play with Saka until I realized that Joey Veerman is 8K and Luke de Jong is 7.5K. That feels a little thin when you're playing those players ahead of players from Bayern Munich and Benfica at the same time. But Noah Lang's pretty cheap too. I don't know. I wouldn't mind people playing some of these players. Lang probably being the best tournament punt if you're interested in something like that. I won't be playing a lineup with Noah Lang, so don't hold me to that. It seems fine.
Yeah, it seems fine. It's not going to be what I do, but
yeah, it's also not. So feel free to disregard.
This I think Saibari, I think is how you say his name. Seems like a really good player. Played him on the last Champions League slate. And I think he had a brace. But he's not quite as same with Bakayoko. Bakayoko seems like a really good player. He seems like he's going to get signed by a bigger club soon. So yeah, like it's a tough game. These PSV guys could score.
Yeah. And maybe that's just a situation like Navas. If they score, maybe Saka just has to go nuts. You can play it that way. You don't have to necessarily play any of these PSV
Seems like
players.
Noah Lang, I get it because of the price. I've tried so many times with him. Seems like he just comes off at half or never really does it. But
I feel
there's just other cheap guys that like better.
Yeah, this goes back to like the Andrew Laird days. So Noah Lang is like stuck in my head. I think Laird had him early and so rare, so he was really excited for his Club Bruges stuff. But that hasn't worked out for me in tournaments either. So proceed with caution. What about United, Ryan? Barcelona are pretty big favorites for a team that has as much, going into the season top 4 predicted team for Manchester United. If you're a United fan, you saw those odds, you would feel probably disrespected by the sports books. But United haven't really done much to convince me otherwise. So, do you think they have a reasonable shot in this game? Some of their players are cheap. I saw $6,200 Marcus Rashford. You have $5,600 Højlund, Bruno 7,400, Casemiro 3,400. If you want to take some shots at guys in tournaments, United are talented, and any of those guys could really bag a goal and an assist for you. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd much rather play these United guys than the PSV guys. Man United have not been good, but Bayern aren't great at keeping clean sheets. And yeah, these guys on United, they're still good players, so they show up in big games. Yeah, I think this game could have goals in it too. That's why. It wouldn't shock me if it goes back and forth. It also wouldn't shock me if sort of Bayern just like put a stamp on Man United's misery. Like 3-4. I mean, United are close to. They're like teetering on the edge of like being in shambles. But I don't know. Like I still want to play their guys. Like I see them scoring, and they're all cheap, like you said. Rashford's cheap, Højlund's cheap. He looked good. He looked good against Brighton. No one's gonna play Bruno. I don't know if I get to Bruno. Doesn't seem like he has. I don't want to say. I don't know. Like I don't know. What do you think about Bruno? I was gonna say it doesn't seem like he has the highest floor in this spot, but
we're playing him in a GPP. So he took a penalty in the Premier League with Rashford on the pitch. So he has that out in him. Who are we comparing him to? We're comparing him to Josh Kimmich and Peter Zielinski. Good plays, right? I think it's fine.
Right. I do too.
Mean, he's a player who can go nuclear in any sort of situation.
There's not that much opportunity cost, like if you want to do something like that.
No, I mean, I agree. Yeah, I guess on the other side for Bayern Munich, we didn't talk about like guys like Serge Gnabry or Kingsley Coman. I don't know. I think they're all fine plays. Just be careful about minutes with Munich guys. I mean, like if Jamal Musiala starts, he's been coming off an injury, so I don't even know if he's ready to start. He might come off the bench, but guys like Thomas Muller probably only going to get 70 minutes. I don't know. Do you feel like we have under discussed a matchup that you like, Ryan? Maybe
I think it's a pretty good spot. That's what I was just to say. I think it's a pretty good spot for Benfica.
Yeah.
We said that Di Maria's probably the lock of the slate at forward at least. Yeah, it's just a really good spot at home. I mentioned I kind of worry about this Salzburg team. They're so young and they got a lot of new players. And these Benfica guys are pretty cheap. I think you could play any of them. Rafa Silva's been in really good form.
7,300.
João Mario is the guy that I probably won't play. Cabral, he's supposed to be pretty good. He hasn't scored for them yet, but he's a Brazilian that they signed. From Fiorentina.
Looks like a pretty classic center forward. I mean, brace spot for
he
him.
is.
That's what you're
He's a
looking
pretty
for.
classic center forward. Yeah. So I like all the Benfica guys. This could be the spot.
I'm going to look at heat maps about Kuchku, see if he's kind of getting some license to roam forward and shoot from distance. I think that'll be an important thing to clarify. But yeah, I mean, I love Rafa Silva in this spot. Really great play. I think really way too cheap. And I've played Ba a lot around his price in Champions League, and he's capable of some pretty good performances, especially at home. He's not defender eligible, so I wouldn't worry about it. But don't play Frederick Orsnes. He's like a converted utility knife defensive midfielder player. He even scored a goal recently, but just please don't do it. 4,100 midfielder. That's reconsider your lineup. I don't think that's a good play. I think just about everyone else, Ba, Kuchku, Mario, Silva, Di Maria, Cabral, those are all great plays, and play two of them. It's very affordable.
Yeah, and then there's one more spot. There's one more spot that we kind of overlooked, and it's probably the same thing is going to happen tomorrow. And you've got some of the best attackers in the world. Osimhen is as likely as any player on the slate to score a brace. Kvaratskhelia, KK might be the best player on the slate, just fantasy aside. Could easily score 2 goals. Yeah, those Napoli guys are good tournament plays because I could be wrong, but I just don't really see people getting there. Do you?
I was literally thinking about that. I was wondering, are we going to get like a 15% Victor Osimhen or something? Because people will play
them a little.
People will play them a little. So they'll play Saka, and then people are going to play the 7K level forwards because they're all just good plays. But okay, I mean, Osimhen he's not going to go that low on, so I wouldn't take that at face value. But it's not going to be out of control. Yeah.
No.
And this is a guy who's probably most likely to score a hat trick. I mean, he and Harry Kane. I mean, what's the difference between Osimhen and Harry Kane in this type of situation? Just about the same goal odds, 1,400. Probably a better matchup. I mean, Manchester United, that betting line feels, I don't know, really rude to United. I feel like Braga are a worse opponent, or at least more vulnerable.
Yeah, then you factor in the Braga are at home and United are away. Maybe has something to do with it.
That's going to swing a lot. The odds will change a lot when we do the week 6 fixture. Well, and who knows what happens then for game week 6 in Champions League. But yeah, I mean, I don't really know what to do about Kvaratskhelia because he hasn't been playing a full slate of minutes. But I mean, come on, if we like Zielinski and cash, just change your cash lineup, get rid of Leroy Sané and put in Osimhen and make it work. Seems like a pretty good way to play it.
I agree. And yeah, Kavicha went 89 minutes last time out, which is
so maybe he's back.
Encouraging.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he's fine, but yeah.
Yeah. Any love for the fullbacks there? I wasn't impressed. Di Lorenzo is usually an okay play, but he's 6K. That feels too expensive. And Oliveira hasn't had very strong game logs either. Maybe just there's other good fullbacks, I think. Mixed results.
Yeah. I do have some interest in Di Lorenzo. I do. I think he's a good tournament play. Like I said, I think part of the edge on this slate is getting double digits at both defender spots. And he might be on the winner with just 11 or 12 points or something. He's just so attacking. I mean, every time you watch Napoli, he's up in the box, near the box, shooting. But yeah, no to Oliveira. I don't know if we'll get Mario Rui. Rui steals some corners sometimes. Hopefully we don't get Mario Rui.
Yeah, he hasn't done too much in the way of stealing corners. But I don't know if he's really played at all. But if it's Rui and Zelensky, it has to
I
be a
think it's
slight
because he
downgrade.
hasn't played too much. But
Yeah,
yeah.
no, that's a good
But yeah,
point.
no. I do have some interest in Di Lorenzo just because I want the highest scoring defender. Like
Yeah,
if I fade DeMarco, maybe I play Di Lorenzo.
yeah. Yeah, plenty of good defenders to play. Di
And
Lorenzo's going to
also,
pay 90.
Jack, it just goes back to what you said. Well, a little bit. If Braga score in this game, you're going to want Di Lorenzo.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
one of those things. It's one of those where if like Napoli's behind, you're going to want Di Lorenzo.
Oh, I'm going to want Osimhen might get 8 shots in that game script. So,
Right.
yeah, that feels pretty good. All right, Ryan. I think that's a pretty good and thorough breakdown, and that's just about an hour. So thank you to everyone listening live. Thank you to everyone in the chat. If you're not already a member, there's a link, RotoWire Soccer Trial. Join us in the Discord. Really helpful in big slates like this where there's a lot of news. It's pretty easy to miss a punt, but it'll get brought up in the Discord, I'm pretty sure. Or you just ask, is there a cheap punt? Someone will answer you. So I always think it's a good place to hang out. But until then, good luck in everything, unless you take one of my head-to-heads. You know who you are, RotoWire subscribers. But on behalf of myself and Ryan, good luck tomorrow, everyone.
Good luck, everybody.